Welcome to Illustration and Media Digital Applications. This is Module 3, Unit 3.3, the offset and the tape measure commands. Today, we will be using the offset command to create walls. We'll be learning how to use the tape measure command to create guidelines. And finally, we will be using the tape measure command to scale our objects. I'm Sherry McKinley. Let's get started. Let's start now with learning the offset command. To begin, we're going to draw a 20-foot by 20-foot shape onto our screen. And we have a square. And just to explain what offset does, it's the greatest command for creating walls in our SketchUp model. And basically what it does is it takes any shape in our model, which I have 20 feet by 20 feet here, and with those lines it will make a copy of that shape to the inside or to the outside, a certain distance that I will specify. Now we're going to begin by choosing only one of the lines to start our offset. Now when I choose only one line in SketchUp, it will assume I mean all of them. Okay, so I'm just going to choose one and it's going to basically offset every single line that I see here. So we're going to start by choosing a line, then we're going to go to the Tools menu and select Offset. Now the shortcut for this is right there, and you can see it beside the Scale menu. Okay, so have the line selected, go to the Tools menu, choose Offset, and it wants to know first, do you want to offset the shape to the inside of your original shape or to the outside? Now I'm going to click on the inside. Now I haven't done that yet, I'm just hovering so far, and I'm deciding, where I want to go. So I'm going to click once and release. I haven't done it. Here we go. Click once, release, and hover. And you can see how it made a copy of the original square, and now it wants to know what is the distance that you wish to offset. I'm going to type in 6, enter. Now I didn't need to type at that point. I could have simply clicked where I wanted to go, but because we're dealing with design and architecture, we're typically pretty accurate when we do that. Now you can see that I basically have the outside shape. I've made it a copy that is smaller now. It's rescaled smaller with a 6-inch distance. And this is awesome because at this point, I can use my push-pull command to separate those surfaces, click on the outside walls, hover, and type the distance of the offset. And it's the perfect way to make walls for my space. Okay, we're going to try this one more time, and let's go ahead and draw another 20-foot by 20-foot square on our screen. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to do something called multi-select. So go to your black select tool and choose one of the lines of what will be your wall. And if I hold down the Shift key right now, you'll see that that kind of changes what I see near my arrow. That allows me to select more than one thing at a time. And that goes for everything in SketchUp. So I'm going to select this line and then this line. Now I told you before that if I select only one line for offset, it will assume that I want to offset all of the lines. But what if I only want to offset 3 of the walls and keep one of the areas open so that I can view into the space? This would be how to do it. Again, I selected a line, hold down the Shift key, select another line, to get right on that line, and then the third line. Now I'm still going to go up to the Tools menu and select Offset. The process is the same. Pick once on the inside, click, hover, type 6, enter, and now when I'm going to push-pull it 8 feet, I have only 3 walls that have been offset.
The basics of the offset tool are pretty easy to understand. You can see in these examples how the tool works. Click on any flat surface to offset its edges in or out. With that introduction as a basis, let's look at how to use the offset tool in more detail. As we saw, the offset tool will auto-select and work on any flat surface if nothing is selected. Or you can focus the tool by selecting a single surface. Remember, only one surface at a time. You cannot offset multiple surfaces or curved surfaces. Furthermore, you can select individual edges to offset. When selecting edges, you must make sure the edges are all connected and in the same plane. Use modifier keys with the Select tool to select several edges and then use the Offset tool to offset only those edges. The classic example of offsetting edges is creating a door frame. You can see if we offset the whole door surface, it creates extra geometry below the door we'd need to clean up. However, by selecting only edges we need, we can offset the door frame cleanly the first time, or even multiple times. As with other tools, if you need to be accurate, simply start the offset, type in the exact value you need, and press the Enter key to finish. Also remember that inferring works great when creating multiple offsets. If we create the first offset at a specific distance, then we can use inferring to quickly create other offsets at the same distance, even around corners. Just be mindful of which side you offset from if you need to infer to another edge. Offsetting from this edge makes inferring easy. However, if we offset from this edge, we can't infer to the previous edges. Another shortcut you can use is to double-click your mouse to repeat an offset distance. Create one offset, then double-click on the other surfaces to offset by the same amount.
This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SketchUp, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 11. Continuing with our series on the basic tools of SketchUp, we're going to talk about what I think is really one of the most useful tools in SketchUp, the tape measure tool. Now, it is how you measure objects in SketchUp, figuring out how long things are, as well as it allows you to draw guides that really help you modeling. Let me show you how. So this is the project that I'm going to be using to demonstrate the tape measure tool. If you want to follow along, you can just go to our website, which is www.harwoodpodcast.com, look for the SketchUp a 3D Toolbox show notes, and in the show notes for this episode I'll have this lesson file available for download, so you can kind of follow along if you want to. Or you can just skip that part and just kind of wing it a little bit. So as you can see here, this is just kind of a pretty basic pad with this one column protruding out of the top of it. And this is really great for demonstrating the tape measure tool because it's pretty self-explanatory, really. The tape measure tool is used to measure things. Now, this could be if you open up a model from someone else and you're not sure what the scaling of it is or what the size of something is because you yourself didn't model it, or, I mean, you can't keep track of all these dimensions that you type in. If it's a complex model, it's very easy to forget how big something is. So, particularly if you're modeling, say, an actual room, I personally have used SketchUp a lot to create SketchUp models of a room that I'm redoing, and then be able to move furniture around, try different paint colors. I use it for that all the time, and if that's the case, it's very nice to see how wide is that doorway or how long is that wall. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing you need to know, obviously, is where the tape measure tool is. And it's right up here in your toolbar. Just look for this little tape measure icon. If you hover your mouse over it, it'll say tape measure. So you can click on it there. Or you can also find it over here in the tool palette. Just look down through here. It's somewhere right in the middle, right around there. Same icon. Or, as you know, I love keyboard shortcuts. And the keyboard shortcut for the tape measure tool is the letter T. Just tap the letter T, snaps you right into the tape measure tool, which is very, very handy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to measure something. So let's say we want to figure out how wide this column is. Just by looking at it, we can tell that it's pretty much a square, probably exactly a square. So we just need to know what this one side of it is. And to do that, it actually works quite similarly to a tape measure in the real world. With a tape measure in the real world, you position the tape measure at one point, then you position the other end of the tape measure at the other point, and you are then told how long the distance is between those 2 points. And it works the same way in SketchUp. So the first thing you do is you need to figure out what you want to measure. So in this case, we want to measure these 2 points here. This one here, and this one here. And you can see the little green dot actually snaps to it. It also snaps just to edges or center points if you want. Just like everything else in SketchUp, it's always snapping to something. So now all we have to do is just click once on the point where we want to start the measurement. Click once, and then you can see we now have this little line that stretches out to wherever our cursor is. And then we don't have to click again. We can just hover the tape measure over that little corner, and as always, you can see it actually gives us a little bit of a pop-up, but it doesn't always do that, and it goes away pretty quickly. So what I like to do is I like to just use the dimensions box, which if you've been following around in our previous episodes, you know that the dimensions box takes many forms, and at the moment, that little box down in the bottom right-hand corner now says length 1 foot. And you can see that if I move the pointer around, that length is constantly changing. And this is really the best way to look at the dimensions that you're getting from the tape measure tool, because you get very, very accurate measurements. Like that one right there, it says that from that one point to the point where I'm hovering right now, it's 1 foot, 4 inches, and 3/8 of an inch. So it gets very, very detailed. SketchUp actually can go down to, I believe, 1/16 of an inch. But now to get out of the tape measure tool, all you have to do is hit the escape key. And then it gets you out of the tape measure tool and you can measure something else. So here's what I want to do. I want to see, I know that this is now a 1 foot square column. Let's see how tall this column is. So then I can just click at a point down at the bottom here. And actually, I'll show you, it doesn't need to be a corner. It'll actually snap anywhere along this line right here. If I zoom in here, let's say I just go here. It's height, so it doesn't really matter where I go. And you can see this is looking slightly different now. For one thing, you notice that it, as with every other tool, snaps to the axis. You can see that it's a blue line, and I actually can't move my cursor to make it go anywhere else. It is smart enough to know that I must want to scale up this wall and find a point directly on this wall, or I could also, of course, go out this way or out that way with it. But I want to go up this wall, snapping to the blue axis, which is the vertical axis, and then all I have to do is just hover to a point somewhere on this top line up here. Let me zoom in on that a little bit so you can see. Just somewhere on that point up there. And you can see that the length, you can see the length is 4 feet. So that's a 4 foot tall column. Press the escape key to get out of that. Now let's say I want to figure out where exactly the column is on this pad here. So I want to figure out the distance between this edge and that edge, and this edge and that edge, because I want to have this column on all 4 corners here, but in the exact same location, the same distance from each edge. So I want this to be right here, here, and here. But I'm not sure how far away it is from each edge. Well, the tape measure tool is much more than just a tape measure tool. Think about this. You use a tape measure not only just to figure out how long things are, but also to use them as guides. If you're, for example, building something with wood, actual physical objects rather than just 3D pixels on a screen, you will use a tape measure and a pencil to mark guides for yourself. And the tape measure in SketchUp is no different. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say we wanted to draw a guideline between, actually just right along here, right along where that edge of that column is, just draw it all the way across here so that we can use that guide over here on this corner to make our next column. So what I do there is, to make a guide in SketchUp using the tape measure tool, you have to start from an edge, right? So if you start from a corner, it doesn't always work, and if you start from just somewhere on a plane, for example, it never works. All you'll get if you click, you don't get anything. So it's best to start on an edge. It can be either at a center point, like that, or it can be just from somewhere on a line. Just click once, and then you'll notice it snaps to the red axis, which is very nice. It snaps right across, so that it's actually going out like that. If I wanted to snap it somewhere else, I could, of course, use the arrow keys, use the up key, for example, and snap it so that it's going up vertically, or use the left arrow key and have it go along the green axis. But the red axis is really what I'm after, so I'll just leave it at that. And now what I need to do is I just need to hover my tape measure over either this line right here, or I can even just hover over the face of this thing, and it's smart enough to do that. You'll find that you rarely need to get very detailed with where you position your cursor with the tape measure tool or the move tool or the push-pull tool. For this kind of snapping thing, oftentimes just getting on the face of whatever it is you want to snap to is enough. And then you notice that there's this kind of ghostly dotted line that this tape measure tool has created right at that point where the measurement stops. And you notice the length that still says 1 foot, so it's 1 foot from the edge. And if I click now, the dotted line becomes solid. And you'll notice that it is now stretching all the way across the pad. And what's so awesome about this is that if I move in there with, say, for example, the rectangle tool, tap the R key to get into the rectangle tool, it snaps to that line. So I can now create a column just like the other column, exactly 1 foot away from this edge, which is fantastic. So then I know that, okay, 1 foot from this edge, it looks like this guy here is going to be 1 foot away from that edge as well. So all I have to do then is draw another line going this way, and then I'll have the point where those two guides intersect. I'll have that point. That's my starting point for my next column. But in this case, I can click on the edge, and I can stretch it out here as far as I want, but I have nothing to snap to. So what do I do in that case? Well, as usual, you notice that the length box, or the measurements box, the dimensions box, it takes many forms, but the little box down in the right-hand corner is saying how long my tape measure tool is. In other words, how far apart my 2 points are. So what I can do now is I can actually type a value into that box, just like I can with the rectangle tool, the line tool, the movement tool, everything. I can type in my own custom value. So I know that I want to be 1 foot away from that edge, so all I have to do is type 1 and then apostrophe. Remember, apostrophe makes whatever number comes before it a foot, and then just hit enter or return, and it draws that guide exactly where I wanted it to. Now, as usual, you have to kind of give the tape measure tool some help, where you have to click and then just start drawing in the direction you want it to go. So like if I wanted it to go up, for example, I would need to start drawing the tape measure tool in the up direction and then type in the 1 foot. But that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's pretty natural, actually. And now you'll notice that these two guides, these two dotted lines, intersect at this point right here, and it actually, if I hover over it, it says intersection. So what I can do now is I can use my rectangle tool, click, it snaps to that point where the lines intersect, and now I can stretch it out. That's what I want, and then I can enter in my own custom dimension in the dimensions box, 1 apostrophe 1 foot, comma by 1 foot, enter, and now I've got that. Now I can use the push-pull tool, which you remember is the tool that extrudes things into 3D. So, and the shortcut for the push-pull tool is the letter P. hover over that face right there. See, it kind of grays that out. Click once, and up it goes. Now, I know that the columns are all 4 feet, but there's actually a nice little shortcut for this. If I have the push-pull tool going here, and I just hover the push-pull tool over this face over here, it automatically snaps the push-pull tool to that exact height. You see the distance now says 4 feet, the exact same as this guy over here because I'm hovering over its top face. And click once, confirm. Snapping is really very great in SketchUp. It really is a big time saver. Now, you might wonder, why would I want to use these guidelines? Why wouldn't I just want to use the tape measure tool as kind of a guideline for drawing an actual line with the line tool? You know, so like for example, I could just come over here and say, oh yes, you know, 1 foot. I could say, oh, 1 foot here, and then just kind of find that point and extend an actual line across like that, and that could be my guide if I wanted to. But you notice that's a solid line, which means it actually is going to make a difference in the model. And you'll notice, for example, if I click here, that face and this face are now divided. They're not a single face anymore because of that line is dividing them. And that line is going to be kind of difficult to get rid of. Not impossible to get rid of, but kind of difficult to get rid of once our columns are drawn. And it's going to keep affecting our model. It's going to look strange. Say we want this to be one seamless floor and we wanted to make it a wood color, for example. There'd be this big line all the way through it. Not good. So it's really best to use a guide. I'm going to select that line and delete it. These guides are fantastic for several reasons. One, they don't affect your model. They don't split up the faces that they intersect with. They don't split up the lines that they intersect with either. It's like they don't exist. They're like a ghostly guideline for you. But the other great thing about them is that they're incredibly easy to remove once you're done. So for one thing, you can just click on a guideline, and you see that it makes it turn blue. It's kind of hard to see, but the dotted line is blue. You can select it and then hit delete. That'll get rid of that guideline, but just undo that. There's a much better way. Typically, I mean, you'll be surprised at how much you'll use guidelines. So like, for example, I could, just really quickly here, draw a guideline there, and a guideline there, and oh, I could even draw a guideline up in the air to give myself a guide for the height for all these things. Draw one like that. Go around here, draw another one like that. You can see you can actually use guidelines to snap to other guidelines, which is pretty weird. But see, look at this. You've got a ton of guidelines everywhere. It's looking like a spider's nest. And now you're going to have to go through and delete every single one of them. That's a big pain, and you're going to be surprised. You think, oh, I'll never have that many guidelines at one time. Just wait. You will eventually have not only this many guidelines, but you'll have twice as many guidelines. You'll have hundreds of these guidelines everywhere if you're doing a very intricate and complex model. And going through and deleting them one by one is a huge chore. That's why there's a brilliant little shortcut. I am so glad they have this in SketchUp. All you have to do is go up to the edit, little edit in the menu bar here. Click on the edit menu, and then in this drop down here, you're looking for the delete guides command. And you can even assign a shortcut to this if you wanted to. Just click on delete guides, and every single guideline in your model disappears. This is huge because it is just such a great time saver, and instantly your model's nice and clean. It looks like you did this from scratch without any help at all, and it just in general is a really, really cool function. So as I said, this model will be available on our website for you to download if you want to kind of toy around, maybe add the other 2 columns. Just kind of go for it, follow along, try it yourself, and that is pretty much it. Again, tape measure tool, the most useful tool in SketchUp as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you find the tape measure tool extremely useful in your modeling. I know I have. Every single time I create a new model, a new project in SketchUp, I constantly find myself hitting the T key for the tape measure tool, particularly for the guides function. Think about it and you'll realize how powerful those guides really are. So until next time, you can visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. Remember that I'll be posting the lesson file from this episode on there. Just look for the SketchUp a 3D Toolbox show notes, and you'll be able to download the lesson file. And if you have any questions or comments for me, just send me an email at harwoodpodcast@comcast.net. Until next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.
Okay, let's try working with this tape measure tool. And what we're going to do for the rest of this lesson is we're going to create window openings and doorway openings using the tape measure tool to help us to measure. Now, according to the previous tutorial that we just watched, we know that the tape measure tool can help us by clicking on one side and hovering over another side. It can help us to measure things. So I can see that that is in fact 8 feet. I could go from here and hover to there and see that that is 6 inches, and I could click here and hover to there and see that that is in fact a 19-foot 6-inch wall. But we want to use the tape measure tool to also, of course, create guidelines. So let's say that I want to make a window and I need it to start from this corner. I need it to be 4 feet over and 4 feet up, and then we'll make it 4 feet wide as well. So what I need to do in order to measure that location for myself is I need to click the original ID point, the spot that I know is a 4-foot distance from that spot. So I'm going to click there, hover along the base of the wall, hover, okay, type 4 feet, enter, and at that point I get a black grip. It's a guideline or a guide point. So I'm going to now continue to use my tape measure, click my new guide point, hover in the up blue Z-axis direction, and type also 4 feet, enter. So again, it's a click and a hover and a type. There's no second click. So that gives me a starting point for where I could potentially draw a window. Let's say I'm going to keep going with the guidelines, click on my new spot, my new guide point. Let's hover in the green direction, and let's say my window is 4 feet wide, and I'm going to also then click there and up on blue and say 2 feet for that direction. So now what I have is I have some spots that I can actually use the rectangle command to start a rectangle at that guide point location, click, hover, and finish it at that guide point location and click. So I was able to use the tape measure to give me some guidelines to help me to actually place a window. Now, of course, I can use the push-pull command to click, hover, type 6, enter, and I've actually created a complete opening for that window. Let's do that one more time. This time we're going to use that to make a doorway. So I'm going to click on the tape measure command. We're going to go to the back wall of what we previously drew. Click the corner, hover over, we're going to use 3 feet, click our new guide point, go up on the blue axis, type 6'7", enter, click our new guide point, hover, type 3 feet, enter, and then use the rectangle command to start here, hover and drag to here, and push-pull a doorway through 6, enter, and now I have an opening for a door. That is the greatest way to get window and door openings. Now, little trick. Using the scale, move, and rotate command now, I'm going to show you how I actually insert doors and windows from the Get Models location. So here's our Get Models location. I'm going to click there. Little slow on the Wi-Fi right now. I'm going to type in my search window, I'm going to type window. And when I find a window that I like, I'm going to choose this window right here. I'm going to click it and click on download model. And yes, I will load this directly into my SketchUp model. So the first thing I need to do is bring that window into my space. Click. Just want to look at this window. Haven't seen this one in a while, so I need to orbit. So I think I'm going to have the sill obviously on the outside. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is to rotate that window using the rotate command. So click on the window, click on rotate. I'm going to use the blue axis here to click on the floor for a base point. Click, click a reference location. Again, that's 2 clicks. Hover the window, type 90, enter. Now, how I would get this window exactly into this precise opening is I use the move command first, click on the corner front of the window, click, drag my mouse, and I essentially snap that front corner of the window into the front corner of the opening and click. Now what I want to do, need to get closer to my work by zooming a window. Now what I want to do is use my scale command to scale that window to fit it into the opening that I've given or provided for it. So I'm using the uniform scale there until it snaps into place. Then I'm going to orbit and use the scale command again. Grab the middle grip, which we know from a past tutorial that will only scale the width of the window. So I'll use that middle grip, click, hover, and it snaps into place widthwise, click. And then I'm going to check out the height of the window, and I think honestly that I don't even have to change the height of the window. If I did, I would simply have gone to the scale menu and changed the height. But I think that I do need to work on the depth very slightly. So I'm going to choose the middle front grip, change the depth of the window to snap it into place there, and now my window is in place. So we're really building on the past commands that we've learned. We were just able to use the tape measure command to measure out an opening, draw a rectangle so that we could place an opening, use push-pull to push it through, and then the get models location to grab a window, bring it into our model, move it into place, and then rescale it to fit the opening so it's precise. Now, the final use of the tape measure command is to resize an object according to a specific width, depth, or height that we know, where it might be different from the original size that we have. And so this is different from using the scale command to resize it, because with the scale command, remember, we're using a scale factor. We would have to know that it has to be twice as big or half as big. However, with the tape measure, we only need to know the distance that we wish for it to be. Now, step number 1 is to double click to get inside of the component. If you miss that step, you will actually risk resizing your entire model, which is a very bad thing to do, according to the rescaled object that you're using tape measure to rescale. So double click to get inside of the component, then use the tape measure command to click on 2 points of a known distance. Let's say, for example, that I know that from here to here, it says in the bottom right hand side that that distance is 2'7". Let's say that I need that to be 4 feet, and I need to rescale that object so that the entire sofa rescales itself so that that cushion is 4 feet wide. What I need to do is click one side, click the second side, and simply retype the new distance. It will ask me then, do you want to resize the active group or component? And I will say yes. And you'll see that it got much larger. So what just happened is I was able to click 2 sides of something that I knew, so the left and the right side, click and click, type the new distance, and it prompts me to resize the whole component. Now, it's important to note that it will resize the width that you know, but it will resize it uniformly so that the entire object becomes much bigger about that new distance.